Surprised at how many strengths and resources you actually have? It's quite common. If you're not, then probably your partner didn't test you enough. That what else thing is necessary in my experience to wheedle it out of us what we're actually good at. It's worth remembering, I've left Craig's example on the board because when we get to this goal setting, which is what comes out of this envisioning of the where, one of the things we want to bear in mind are the things that we're actually good at already and how we can use those, because the next stage is to think, well, if these strengths is what got me from a 3 to a 4, how can I use these strengths to get me from a 4 to a 5? And when we get to the how part of this planning, that's exactly what we'll be asking. So keep this as a reference through the rest of this process, because these are things that Craig has already identified as already being on board. These are not things that he's got to go out and learn, these are strengths that he has already. So it seems logical and efficient to, when we get to that action part, to apply those ideas, to apply those strengths. So when it comes to financial management moving from a 5 to a 6, how can I deploy these skills and resources that I have already? Rather than necessarily going and getting a course or getting new money or whatever, introducing new stuff, how can I use the stuff I've got already? Now, I want to swing aside. Any comments on this? Anything came out of this for you?
I thought social and environmental was something totally different to what Craig mentioned and Sarah. Like I think we all have totally different things of what these things are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for example, in your case?
Oh, to me, like social environmental is like helping the community. Like Sarah's helping the community, but like I'm really passionate about like recycling and like alternative packaging, free range, like against factory farming, like all that kind of stuff. And like whereas that's more maybe environmental, and then social would be like teaching interns and things like that.
Yep.
But yeah, is there like a wrong and right about social element?
Absolutely not.
And
how can there be? It's your success criteria.
Yeah.
In the end, you know. So it must mean different things to different people.
Okay.
Some people want to have families and they're put having a family in there. Some people are not interested in having families, you know.
Yeah.
You can't say one is right or one is wrong. It's just what living a good life is to you.
Yeah.
You know. Sometimes people sort of struggle a bit with sort of old school, hardline business people, you know, when you get them talking about this sort of stuff. The best they can do is, well, I provide employment for other people. And that's fine, you know, if that's your idea, if that's only where your thinking's at, then good. I think from my scale of values, there's probably a little bit further to go with, you know, thinking like that. But I'm not going to make judgments. Nevertheless, what you measure, and this is what you're getting at there, I think, what you measure is what you get. And I've mentioned that before. If you only measure the money, then that's what your business is about. If you want to think, if your business is about other stuff, and in my experience, in 99 times out of 100, it's about other stuff as well as the money, then you need to include that in your plan, because that's part of the point of what you're doing with your business, you know. And this is a method of getting those sorts of values into your business plan. So the business plan is more than just the money. And why is that important? Well, as I said before, it's important, if nothing else, for resilience. It's important to understand why you're in the business beyond just the money, because when times are tough, you need to cling on to that to help you get through the tough times, you know. And it's rarely clinging on to the money. It's usually what the meaning of the business is for you. And that's this stuff down here, this personal, social, environmental stuff. Okay, so we're going to take this vision, this broad vision, and turn it into some goals now, okay? And those will be, if you're only starting, those are going to be estimates. If you've been in business for a while, they're going to be firmer numbers and firmer values. But keep that off to the side to refer to, because we will come back to this. And this is the second trope. You can't manage what you can't measure. Even with this soft stuff, this goal setting is about finding some sort of metrics, finding some sort of way of measuring how we're progressing towards that rosy future. You know, how do I know in a year's time that I've actually made some progress from where I'm at now, a 4, towards a 5, which is where I want to be next year? You know, how will I actually know that? If I can't measure that, then I have no way of actually testing my progress. So, swinging aside entirely for a moment, just to show you another tool that people have. It's here because people really like it. They find it really useful. And it's a pricing tool. It's on page 14. The best way to do this is probably, again, through an example. So, I need somebody to volunteer. Again, not crazy. Thanks, Anna. It's here because very often when it comes to pricing, we've found that people price just comparatively, you know. So I go out into the marketplace and I find out what people doing similar stuff are charging, and I charge something around there, you know. And of course there is a bit of that, you know, it is what the market can be. You can't go to a marketplace with an outrageously inflated price. Or if you go to a marketplace with a really cheap price, you're actually wondering, you know, is this as profitable as it should be? But there's actually a whole science in pricing, you know. And this is really just to, if you haven't already, introduced some science to the process of coming to a price. There's a whole bunch more than this. And if you're interested, there's an online course you can buy from Edgeware on finances, which actually has a whole sort of chunk of material on this. It's a workshop by itself. When we're talking about prices, one of the things we want to talk about, and again this isn't in your workbooks, it's just a note up here, is what it costs you to produce that thing, you know, the good that we're talking about. And why do we need to know that? We need to know that because the difference between the price and what it costs you to produce the good is your margin, is the profit. And profit is something that interests us in business. So when we're estimating what those costs are, that by itself is a whole process that I'd recommend that you look at what you put into the production of that garment. So the research, development and design, nobody's paying you for that, right? You've got to get those costs back somehow. And the way to get that back is as a component of your price. How do you estimate what component of your price is? That is, well, it's actually tricky. Because this might have taken you some years to do for a start. It happened before you even pick up tools or start to actually manufacture a garment. And also, you know, it depends on the scale. So if it costs you $100 in R&D, research and development, and you're producing 1,000 garments, then that's cheaper per garment than something else. So it's guesstimation at the beginning, and you get better, in my experience, with guesstimating what proportion of the cost of a given product is given to, you should locate over here. Then there's the production itself, which is raw materials, labour, and probably rental, machine depreciation, that sort of stuff. And then out. So in production and out, marketing, selling, distribution, and administration, sometimes abbreviated as MSDA. So this is a bundle of costs that are about not just making the good, but getting the good to the customer effectively. Okay? So these are all costs that you have to pay attention to when you're pricing, because the difference between price and costs is your profit. There are different kinds of costs in here, and again, there's not time to really go into this in great detail. There's fixed costs and variable costs. If you're paying rent, that's a fixed cost. It's something that's going to come out of the till every month, no matter what happens in that space, you know. It's fixed. Variable costs are more things like insurances, variable costs, things like rent, phone, electricity, legal, accounting, insurance, and card costs. So they vary from time to time, different times of the year. Rental, insurance, and fixed costs are going to cost the same no matter what you're doing in the business. So when you add all of that up, that's a component of your price. That's the cost of getting your product designed, manufactured, distributed, and sold. And price is up here. The difference is profit. Okay, so far. So, just some metrics, just an interesting little tool. This is really broad, and this is where data comes in. This is built for a unit cost, which is an hourly rate, because so many of my customers are service providers. Here, though, you're actually making stuff, mostly. So the unit cost is going to be what it costs for a particular line, okay? A given garment in a given line. And you can use this tool again and again and again for every single garment in a line. It's tricky if you've got a really huge range. You can do this as a kind of an averaging thing, if you like, so you've got particular styles of the same garment, and it costs about the same to produce each one. You can kind of average it out. It sort of depends. But just as a general principle, the whole idea is to just introduce some science to this pricing business rather than, again, just going and seeing what your competitors are charging and charging something similar. So, it starts with and this is for you, Anna, how much money you want to take home at the end of the year. And this is in this perfect world. Okay. It's not now, it's just this perfect world.
So,
after you've paid everything else, the money that actually goes into your pocket that you can spend on a holiday or a new car or something at the end of the year.
Right. So am I looking at this solely as my label, or do I look at it as an overall?
In the business as a whole.
Yeah.
Let's look at it as the label,
Okay.
because what with the unit price we're looking for is that
Right.
garment.
So around 120.
Okay. To that we add tax, superannuation contributions on costs generally related to that wage. Generally, rule of thumb in our kind of business is about 30%. Does that sound about right? Yeah. To you, roughly? So that's another 40,000 in tax on costs, etc. With me so far? That is, in order for Anna to take this home, she's going to have to pay this in tax super related costs related to that dollar.
When you're talking, sorry, about taking home, is that what you're taking home as a salary, do you mean? Or?
No, that's just the gross.
Okay.
And again, it's worth mentioning, actually, and a really rough as guts approach to pricing is 33%. The accounting regarding its cost of goods sold, so it's just the amount that it costs you to produce that thing. 33% salary, 33% profit. Now, if you're at the beginning, sorry.
Would it be helpful to have a different slide?
If you're at the beginning of the business, this is a bit of a nonsense because you're just taking what you can, as cream. But it's worthwhile trying to pay yourself a salary, even if it's a notional one, from the beginning. So that you get into your head, you should be paying a salary in the same way as if you're employing somebody else, paying yourself a salary. But then the business should be making a profit as well. It's something that particularly creatives have a lot of trouble with because they actually think that they put these things together. That's the cream, that's the money that I've got to spend. But really, it's worthwhile. Yes,
What's the cost?
Cost of goods sold. So just the cost of producing, distributing, selling, handling those goods. So if you can't afford to actually differentiate a salary and a profit, in our business the business is loaning us money and we're sort of paying it back and etc. all the time. But as an accounting principle, just keep it in mind because you are in business to make a profit after all. Not just to buy yourself a salary, to actually generate some capital. Well, most people are. Now this is the bit where it's tricky. Anna's going to be in business for a while, so she's going to have some kind of idea. But what does it cost to do all of this, to produce the goods that we're pricing in this exercise?
So that amount, somewhere between 20 and 30,000.
So for Anna to take home her desired gross, which is at the moment a combination of these two things, salary and profit, she's got to turn over, her business has to turn over 190. Yeah, with me so far? But no,
How do you explain the 120,000?
that's what Anna wants to take home.
Yes, it doesn't include the salary.
Yes, it's a combination of salary of these two components.
Okay.
It's what the business grosses, what the business nets after taxation and costs. Yeah. How much of that she pays herself as a salary, how much as the business is not for this tool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to divide.
The next turnover, the next turnover, the desired annual earnings.
Is
The next turnover?
after tax and after costs. Yeah.
Sorry, I just had a question. Like when you're looking at annual costs and expenses, do you add your own salary in as an expense at that stage? The last figure, the 30,000?
You should.
Actually, you should.
The salary has to be somewhere.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking what
No,
the
you're right.
120,000
So this is net for the business.
That's right. And so,
So Anna, sorry, can we revisit this? What salary are you paying yourself?
1 million.
Probably on that, hopefully looking at around 30 of that.
So with 30,000 in costs, we can put it like that. So 90,000 is what the business takes, and you're taking 30 of this as a salary. Thank you, Ladilla. Did anybody just pick up my mistake as well?
But then, I thought it was very low for expenses.
Sorry?
I think 30,000 was very low for expenses, but yeah, like, just without
Yeah.
the amount.
Yeah, I mean, it's whether how accurate or not is depends on just how much information you've got. You know, if you're just guesstimating, then that's one thing. But you're thinking about a particular line, yeah. So this is just that this part of your business, which is for that line, which is good. Underneath, there are 52 weeks in a year. How many holidays? How many weeks of holiday would you like?
I'd like to have 4, but
Okay.
about 2.
Well, let's shoot for 4. This is about this perfect world, you know. So there are 48 weeks where Anna can actually earn money. Now this might be slightly different for manufacture. She takes a holiday and the manufacturing might continue. This variation is built on the unit price being an hour. You know, this unit price we're going to chase is the unit, the price you put on a garment. Okay? So it may well be that you can actually earn this even when you're on holiday, because other people are, you know, this has not taken into account employees, for example, which is another wrinkle on the costs. But let's assume you're only selling when you're present, just for the tool to work. Otherwise, you can just leave this bit off and assume that you're selling at the same rate even when you're on holidays. You know. But certainly, if you're getting paid by the hour and we're chasing the unit price, nobody's paying you to have a holiday. You have to pay that for yourself. Okay. And we're going to multiply that number of weeks, that number of selling weeks. And this is really, this other side is really just the number of garments you think you can sell in that week. So this is the number of billable hours, or the number of hours worked minus, in the book, minus the free hours, the hours you don't get paid, because you're after the billable hours in the same way as we're after the garments that can be sold, not the ones that are sitting on the rack, the ones that actually move out the door. So how many of these do you reckon you'll be able to sell in a week on average?
Okay, so in a week on an average, maybe 600, 700.
600?
Say 600.
Can you do, can somebody So 48 times 600.
28,800.
28,800. So that's how many Anna's setting herself as aiming at selling in a year.
Oh, that's not how much I want to sell. I want to aim to sell more.
You want to sell more?
Yeah, but I'm thinking, I was thinking now, sorry. So, okay, so maybe, well, I'd like to do 5,000 or 6,000
In a week?
and not a week. 2,000 a week would be good.
Okay. So calculate please, 48 times 2,000.
96.
Is that right? 96,000?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is the amount that she has to earn altogether. This is how she's going to earn it. We divide this by this to get
1.979, which is rounded up, I guess, to 1.980.
okay. $1.98 is, this is what it comes out as using this logic. Okay. Now this can be flawed. It might be that you can actually sell for 52 weeks, in which case you're actually selling more of these, and then in which case that will be a lower number. It'll be cheaper. And that's really the value of it. Once it's an equation, right? You can go forwards and backwards. If this just seems like an outrageously high price, you can go back here and you ask yourself, well, can I trim down my expectation of what to take away? Can I save money on taxation and on costs? Can I save money on production costs, production distribution costs?
But
If I can't,
in this particular case, if you are talking about one line product, then you set up yourself with $90,000 bringing in for just that one product or annually?
Well,
Yeah.
that makes it annually, doesn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
So with the cost, $1.98 is actually how much you're selling
Yeah,
per piece
that's
for.
what I wanted. What is that $1.98?
The $1.98 is this total. So what you're taking home plus cost, tax and super and on cost, plus cost of production. That's the gross cost.
For each garment, is that right? That's all.
This is how many garments you reckon you can sell, or this is how many garments you reckon you can sell divided into the total cost.
Okay, so I've
All
done
the
that
garments.
wrong. I'm thinking that 96, oh no, that's
2,000 a week
That's
times
96,000
48
items.
weeks.
5, isn't it?
That's 96,000 items,
Right.
yeah, total.
So you get 180.
See, I'd be happy to sell 100 items, like, does that mean I then sell 40?
See, I was thinking that was $2,000.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking 10,000 items a week.
Okay, so how many,
Okay.
See, I'm thinking financial.
All right, okay.
so how many items?
I'd be happy with, say, all right, let's do 100. I think 100. Yeah.
100 a week.
Yeah.
So that's 4,800 in a year,
Yeah.
assuming that you're only earning 48 last week. So, calculate please. 190 divided by,
50. $50 is the unit.
okay.
I got 39.5. Did you?
Whoop.
It looks like 39.60.
39.58.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, that feels more comfortable price.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if this is too high, and it quite often comes in that people, need to sell things at a huge price, a price that their gut tells them they're not going to sell for. And if that's the case, then just go back and tweak these values. So lower your expectations of what it is that you're actually going to earn. Work more weeks, or sell more units in a week. So you can tweak backwards and forwards. Now, it's a really inexact tool, this one. It doesn't take into account other things like depreciation of equipment and etc. Well, it can if you're actually going to be really accurate with this, the COGS number. But it gives you at least some sort of science around this.
So is that the markup or is 39.60, say we're selling a full piece swimsuit?
Yeah.
Is that swimsuit 39.60 or is it the markup on that swimsuit?
That's your total price. That includes
That's your wholesale price.
the costs.
It would be our retail
that'll be
price
your
for
retail
our
price.
wholesale.
This is what you've got to sell at in order, whether it's retail or wholesale.
Oh, okay.
This is what you've got to sell at to take that home.
Okay.
That's the bottom line.
Because you're wholesaling your goods.
No, I'm retailing.
You're retailing.
Yeah, so that would be my retail. If you were wholesaling, it'd be your wholesale.
Yeah.
Or Michael, can you use the same thing to work out like for us, the cost of our hourly rate for our service? So you can use the same thing.
It's just, again, for here, this is the number of units Anna reckons she can sell a week. This is the number of hours you can get paid for a week, not the number of hours you work.
Which is the example in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I need to teaching, because the amount of hours doesn't equal all the amount of work.
So whether unit price is a thing or an hour, the formula, the principle works the same. Okay. Any questions or feedback on that? It's there, it's not really in the flow of things, but it's there because people find it useful to start making some broad financial goals.
I'm really interested in costing because it's something that I always fail on.
Yeah.
So from 39.60,
Yeah.
what would be the markup? You
You'd have to work it out as what this and this is as a proportion of this.
Okay.
So this is the component of this that you're going to take home,
Yeah.
minus the costs. So it's probably going to be, if it's
In this
100
case,
it's
it's
about
about
half. That'll be about 50%.
Okay.
So that means from cost price to wholesale, we should be charging 50%, and the formula from wholesale to retail for all clothing is 111%, which is being
So if you were hitting this, you'd be on about right. It sounds like on that.
Yeah.
That's not it.
Most people put 70% from cost to wholesale. That's about an average that most people that then wholesale goods that are fashion items that aren't branded luxury fashion items. That's what they put on.
So you're saying it was 70% from cost of wholesale and then 111 from cost to
From wholesale to retail.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's,
It's a really volatile market. I used to work in bookshops and there you were